Steve Madden to slash China sourcing by as much as 45% as Trump's tariff plan looms. Here's the scoop. Today's article comes from CNBC, and it says Steve Madden is in hot water because apparently majority of their products are being made in China, and they're saying that due to the election of President Trump, that they might have to slash as much as 45% of their imports from China because of Trump's looming tariff plans. Hey there, thanks for clicking on the video. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell for notifications. Now, let's get back to the scoop. So we're going to get into it. Again, today's article comes from CNBC, and the article says Steve Madden said Thursday that it will slash the goods it imports from China by as much as 45% over the next year as it braces for President-elect Donald Trump to carry out his pledge for steep tariffs on imports from other countries. On an earnings call, CEO Edward Rosenfeld said the shoe brand has been planning for a potential scenario in which we would have to move goods out of China more quickly. Over the past few years, he said it looked for factories in other countries, including Cambodia, Vietnam, Mexico, and Brazil. As of yesterday morning, we are putting that plan into motion, he said Thursday, and you should expect to see the percentage of goods that we source from China to begin to come down more rapidly going forward. So the CEO, Edward Rosenfeld of Steve Madden, notice what he's not saying, guys. He's not saying that he's moving the factories back to the U.S., which is ideally, I think, what Trump is wanting, what he said he's wanting, right? The whole point of the tariffs. He's actually taking it to other countries that won't be slapped with tariffs. So Cambodia, Vietnam, Mexico, and Brazil. Very interesting. That wasn't the point of the tariffs, but I guess you can't really control these companies, right? So, okay, if they know they can't produce in China, they're going to find another cheap place, right? Ideally, they're not really going to move back their factories to the U.S. because after 4 years, Trump won't be president, and the next president maybe won't slap tariffs on China. You see how this works? So they're just going to hop around to another country where the minimum wage is low and stay there for a while until maybe China's clear and ready to go, or back to no tariffs, or maybe just stay in that new country, right? As long as they're not slapped with tariffs. So the article says Rosenfeld said imports to the U.S. account for about 2/3 of Steve Madden's business. Of that, he said, we currently source a little bit more than 70% of those goods from China. That means slightly less than half of its business will be at risk of tariffs on Chinese imports, he said. Our goal over the next year is to reduce the percentage of goods that we source from China by approximately 40 to 45%. Which means that if we're able to achieve that, and we think we have the plan to do it, that a year from today, we would be looking at just over a quarter of our business that would be subject to potential tariffs on Chinese goods, he said. Trump is expected to put pressure on companies to move more of their production to the U.S. During his presidential campaign, Trump said that he would impose a 10% to 20% tariff on all imports, including tariffs as high as 60% to 100% for goods from China. Now, guys, we've seen this movie before. We know Trump. So this may or may not hold, right? It may be 60. It will probably never be 100, but it might be 60. It might be 30. It might be 40. It just depends, right? But according to Steve Madden, like we just read, they're not going to move their factories to the U.S. by any means. They have no plans to do that, right? So they're just going to find another cheap, minimum wage, cheaper minimum wage country and just, make their shoes there. Other retailers and brands have already made a push to diversify sourcing because of a variety of factors, including reduced labor in China because of its growing middle class. And as a part of an effort to bulletproof their supply chains after disruption from the COVID pandemic and Red Sea shipping crisis. Makes a lot of sense. I don't think that China should have all of the world's factories. I think the world's factories need to be spread out into different countries. That just makes more sense to me. You can't have one country producing all the world's goods, because if something goes wrong in that country, like with COVID, everything is shut down, everything's done, right? We have no more imports, no more exports, and it's a serious problem. Retail analysts and trade groups have warned the proposed tariffs could drive up prices for U.S. consumers and soften spending. Tarang Amin, CEO of makeup and skincare Elf Beauty, said it may have to raise prices on some of its items if tariffs take effect. He said the company has moved more of its production outside of China since tariffs began under Trump's first administration. For Tapestry, the parent company of Coach and Kate Spade, less than 10% of overall sourcing comes from China, the company's CFO Scott Rose said on a Thursday earnings call. He said the handbag apparel accessory maker is watching tariff policy closely, but has gotten plenty of practice with staying nimble. My goodness, we've had so many disruptions and challenges that have forced us to make adaptations based on port strikes and freight lanes, whatever it might be, tariff regimes changing over time, he said. So we're pretty well versed in managing through this. So this is really interesting, guys. Elf Beauty here is saying they're going to raise prices if tariffs take effect. So that's not a good thing. Um, Guys, I got to be honest with you. I don't see these companies moving back to the US. I just don't see it. Like, I don't see them actively saying, hey, we're going to move our companies back to the US. We're going to move all of our production back to the US because Trump can only be president for 4 more years. He can only have 2 terms. This will be his second term. Okay. So after those 4 years, we don't know who's going to be president, and they can just, you know, remove the tariffs, right? And so then it's like they did all that work moving their production for what? Right. And I think a lot of companies are going to do what Steve Madden is going to do, which is they're just going to move to another Asian country or a Latin American country and just call it a day. And they might just stay there forever instead of going back to China. I think the positive outlook of all of this is the fact that, like I said, all of the world's goods cannot be made in one country. That is devastation. That's not productive for the world, right? We have a lot of countries. This is a big earth. We can't have everything made in one country. If there's a plague, if there's a virus, if there's a problem, right? We're done. We don't have any imports and exports. They're all in China. Everything's made in China, and that is a problem. Things need to be more spread out. We do need more factories back in the US as well. But just in general, we need more factories in other countries outside of China. So I think that's the good thing about these tariffs. The bad thing is that it's not going to bring all of the American companies back to the US. It's not going to bring all their production back here. And that's just a fact because their bottom line is making money. And, Trump cannot slap tariffs on every single country in the world to force these companies and these corporations to bring their production back to America. That's just not feasible. It's never going to happen. So, yeah, that's my thoughts about this. I mean, I think that the attempt is good, the attempt is strong, but these corporations do what they want. And you can't really control them unless you really, change the laws dramatically or drastically, right? But if it's just one country you're going to slap tariffs on and that's it, they're just going to move to another country: Cambodia, Vietnam, Mexico, Brazil. Name your pick, right? So, what do you guys think about this in the comments? Do you think that I'm wrong? Or do you agree with me? Do you feel like they're just going to hop to another foreign country with a low minimum wage? What say you? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.